Captain Ken Neidlinger. I own and operate SilverKing Sport Fishing Charter out of St. Joseph, Michigan. I've been professionally guiding for 30 years. I fish the St. Joe River fall, winter, and spring, and Lake Michigan spring, summer, and fall. Fish approximately 300 days a year. If Mother Nature would let me, I'd fish 365. Unfortunately, she doesn't let me. 30 years of professionally guiding, I've had things that I've accomplished. We caught the Dr. Kepler from Chicago on a charter. They caught a 40-pound, 8-ounce lake trout, which still stands as the current record lake trout caught out of Lake Michigan. The previous record was 37 pounds, and he caught that July 19th, 95. And then recently, in the river, Dan Durkin from Evergreen Park, Illinois, caught a 28-pound, 1-ounce brown trout, which is a river record for the state of Michigan. I've also had the opportunity to take Bobby Knight, former basketball coach of Indiana, who's now at Texas Tech fishing, and also Bobby Unser. I was able to do 3 national television shows and do many articles in outdoor magazines and newspapers like Chicago Tribune, Detroit Free Press, Grand Rapids, Kalamazoo. The average guy can't fish as many days as I can. He works during the week, he gets out on weekends or evenings or as often as he can. If he has a day off, he goes out. And we're making this video to help these people catch as many fish as they can. The time that they spend fishing is valuable to them. They should be able to catch fish. And with this video, they certainly will be able to. It'll tell them where, when, and how, and give them little tips that they can add to what knowledge they already have and improve their fishing. It'll make a beginner fisherman a good fisherman, a good fisherman a better fisherman. I enjoy fishing Lake Michigan all summer, but I really enjoy fishing the fall more when we move into the river, and it's just a lot more fun for me. There's a lot of reasons. It's really neat to get up in the morning and get on the boat, and it's just breaking daylight, and sometimes there'll be a little fog coming off the water, and then we get days in the wintertime where there's a fresh fallen snow on the trees, and it just it's pretty, it's beautiful, and it's eerie all in one, and it's just a great time on the river. I really enjoy the river. The favorite thing I saw on the river was a great horned owl, and she took up residence in a hollow tree close to the river. We got in tight, took many pictures of this mother owl and watched her baby grow up. The brilliant colors of that great horned owl, that was my favorite thing. One day on a fishing trip, we were coming back to the landing at the mouth of Pipestone Creek, and we saw this mink running back and forth on the dock, and found the piece of fish and dragged her across the ground. It was really nice to see this black furry mink. Sometimes we get real fortunate. We get to see an offspring. We don't see a lot of them, but they're a beautiful bird. On the river, we see blue herons, mostly in the fall, in the spring. But if the winter's mild, then they're there pretty much through the winter. In the springtime, we see a lot of Canadian geese with their babies, and it's they seem to be somewhat tame. You get close to them, they know you're not going to bother them, and they're really fun to watch. A neat thing to see, and everybody enjoys this, when the steelhead are on the bed spawning in the spring. The sun's shining, we're close to the shore, we fish in tight, and we see them on the beds, and Polaroid glasses help you see them, but it's just really neat to watch these big fish spawning right next to the boat. This is a 24-foot Carolina skiff, and really like this boat. I've had 5 riverboats in the 30 years I've worked the river, and this is the one I like most. It's wide, it's very stable in the water. It's got a rating for 18 people. We never take 18 people. I never have more than 6 people on the boat, and myself being the 7th one. I'm not allowed to take any more than 6 people, but the boat's very stable. It's fast on the water. It holds the water extremely well for sliding downstream through the holes the way we catch the steelhead all winter. Nice thing about the Carolina skiff, you're able to put the pedestal for the steering operation where you want it. You could put it in the middle of the boat, you could put it on this side, you could put it on this side, but I prefer it right here, and it works out really nice to be able to work the river with the controls up front, because the customers will sit in the back, and then I'll be up front, and the weight will be distributed the way we want it to go up and down the river and work the river. So the controls are really nice being right here. The seating arrangement is really good. And then we can have our life jackets over here and the rest of the stuff. And we have the fish cooler out on the bow, so we don't have to keep the fish in the boat. Catch them, take them up here, put them in a cooler. Power winch, cable, anchor so we don't have to pull wet anchor rope up and down. I've got a trolling motor up front. If I do any smallmouth bass or walleye fishing in the summer, that's really nice to keep the boat in the middle of the river and it drifting. And I have my ship-to-shore radio and the antenna up front, which I have to have. Put some steps in here. You really buy the hull, and then you put everything together. You put the seats in, you put the steering pedestal up here. This is how you rig the boat. In the 30 years that I've been guiding, I've had 12, 14 outboard motors, and I've used different brands. Then I got a Mercury motor, and it was the best motor that I've ever used. I really like Mercury. They start in cold weather. They perform extremely well. Mercury, a couple years ago, came out with a 4-stroke engine in the 115. And when I bought the 115, it's the best motor in my mind that Mercury's ever made. This 4-stroke is quiet. It's so quiet, I tried to start it 4 times when it was running. It doesn't smoke. There's no smoke at all. It burns 1/3 less gas. What more could you want? Raising the motor up. That's the trolling plate. Now I have a rope here, and I'll just pull this. It drops right down behind the prop. Now we'll put it back in the water. Now you have to remember, if the wind's blowing real hard, a trolling plate takes away your capability of keeping the boat straight. So if the wind's blowing real hard, you have to be ready to go out and pull that rope with the motor in gear to get that plate up. Because if you put a lot of power to get the boat back straight from the wind blowing you're going to bend that plate. You've got to get that plate up if you're going to put a lot of power. You know, give it more gas to get out of the sliding you into the bank. So when you're using a trolling plate and there's a lot of wind, you have to be ready to get that trolling plate up so that you have enough power to keep from crashing into the bank or a tree. Okay, now we're ready to go, so I'm gonna bring the anchor up. We have a power winch with a cable, 80 pounds of log chain on the bottom. I'm gonna bring the anchor up. Okay, the anchor's off the bottom now. I like to keep it about 2-3 feet off the bottom so that when we get a strike, I can drop the anchor and we'll stay right in that spot and fight the fish. A Shimano mooching reel, and they use this on the west coast mooching for salmon. It's a technique of fishing, and they also use it in Alaska on king salmon. And what's nice about it is it's very simple. It's one-on-one single action fly reel. Very easy to use. When the line goes out, the reel clicks, the handle turns. The drag is here. You can adjust the drag with this knob, so it's the drag's tight or the drag's loose, just the way you want it. And make that adjustment. When the fish hits, he's either hooked and you land him, or he's not hooked and he gets away. When that fish hits, the line will be going out. So I always tell the people to get the rod out of the holder and just hold it up and let him run. Don't grab the handle right away, because with this reel, if they grab the handle, no line can go out. And that's for the fish will bend the hooks out or break the line, he'll get away. So you just let him run. Most people think they have to grab that rod, set that hook, and reel 9,000 miles an hour, setting a new world's Olympic record landing the fish. Fishing should be fun. What you want to do is get that rod out and just let him run and watch him jump. A steelhead is a fish that'll come out of the water 3 feet, out of the water 4, 5, 6 times. It'll be halfway across the river. They're the best freshwater game fighting fish you're going to catch. Now, once the fish slows down, and you're reeling the fish, and then he starts fighting real hard and he wants to take line again, you must let go of the handle. Using a Shakespeare ugly stick with a Shimano single action fly reel, which makes fishing fun. And flatfish is my choice of lure on the kings when they first come into the river. The salmon come into the river, they hit by aggravation, and I do something that this is my secret weapon, and it works extremely well. We catch an awful lot of fish this way, and I print, "Your mother was a carp." I'm going to cover the lures that we use in the St. Joe River. We'll start with the flatfish, which is my favorite. And in the fall, when the king salmon move into the river, we use the T4 silver flatfish. And you'll notice it has 4 hooks. So when it's wobbling in the current near the bottom, and the fish makes a pass at it because the salmon don't feed, they hit it in aggravation. This gives you the most aggravation in the water of any lure that you can use. And silver seems to work best for salmon. And to aggravate them, since they're not feeding, I write on my lures, "Your mother was a carp." And this makes them angry, and they strike the lure, and that's the one we use for salmon. Then when we start fishing steelhead, I like this color, which is a kind of a brass gold color I like best. Seems to work throughout the winter on steelhead better than any other color. But you'll see here that the gold colors can range from a light gold to a dark gold. That's basically what I use. For the salmon and the trout in the river, the flatfish works best. The current's perfect in this river for flatfish. Now, this is called a Hottentot. And if you'll notice, it's gold and black. Likewise, I take the hook off. I don't like the hook they have on it. And I put an Eagle Claw laser, and I believe this is a size 2. And it fits the Hottentot perfect. This is a great bait in the river. It goes deeper than the flatfish. You can run these closer to the boat. And the flatfish, when you run, sometimes I'll run them together. I'll run the flatfish away from the boat, and I'll run the Hottentots in closer because they go deeper quicker. This will go down as deep as 15 feet. Very nice bait in the water. Now in the spring, when the steelhead are in real shallow water spawning, they'll get right in 2-3 feet close to the bank in the gravel and spawn. Now, if I try to use a flatfish or a Hottentot in that shallow water, they'll dig down to the bottom and they'll stay there, and you won't get much action out of them because they're a deeper diving lure. So to get one that works in the shallow water, you use the Tad Poly. This Tad Poly will run much shallower. It will work fine in 2, 3, 4, 5 feet of water, where the Hottentot is good in 12 to 15, and the flatfish is good in 6 to 12. So this is what we use when they're on the beds. Get right in on the beds, and it works extremely well. It's called a Tad Poly. And again, I change the hooks. I never put a lure in the water without changing the hook. When I buy a lure to fish steelhead in the river, or when I buy a lure to fish trout and salmon anywhere, I never use the hook that comes on the lure. I change the hook. This is a T4 flatfish that we use for steelhead and salmon in the St. Joe River. I've taken 3 of the hooks off. I'm taking the last one off now. You just bend that arm out, pull the hook off. This is the hook that comes on it. Now this is the hook that I'm changing to. I like this Eagle Claw laser hook better because it's smaller diameter in the shaft and the barb is closer to the tip, so that when the fish hits, it'll penetrate past the barb and hold the fish on better than this hook. So I don't like this hook, and besides, this is a bigger, heavier hook, and we'll eliminate that. We'll take a size smaller, and that means that the lure will actually work a little better. Get a little more action on it with this smaller hook. And you can just change these hooks fairly easy on this lure. And this Eagle Claw hook, it's spending $2 more to change the hooks on the lure, but it's worth it. It pays dividends when you do that. You'll land far more fish by doing this. It just takes a little work and a couple more dollars, and you're going to catch more fish. And that's why I do it, because your tackle people will buy hooks by the millions, and they don't. It's a cheaper hook and not as good. So it pays a lot of dividends by changing those hooks from this hook to this hook. This is the knot that I use. There's probably 2 or 3 names for it. I've heard it called different things, but I call it a fisherman's knot. And the reason I call it a fisherman's knot is because most fishermen use this knot. And they use it because it's quick, it's fast, and you want to save time. Put the line through, twist it around. By the way, don't use a snap swivel on a body bait, because the snap swivel can open up, it can pull apart. You don't need it. This bait doesn't spin. It's not going to twist your line. It just wobbles. So don't use a snap swivel. Wrap it around 6 times. Stick it through the opening. Put it down under the other loop. Wet it with your mouth, and then just pull it down good and tight. Make sure it's good and tight. And then you can take, I use a pair of scissors, it works extremely well. Just trim it off. And that's the knot that most fishermen use, and it'll get the job done. People will often say, Captain, you got a knot in your line. Yes, I do have a knot in my line. There's 3 reasons it's there. The line on the rod is 20-pound test. On the reel, on this rod, is 20-pound test. So I take a piece of 30-pound test, approximately 3 feet long, and I tie it into the 20. Same knot you would use to tie your hook on. Always leave 3/4 of an inch of line on both ends, so that when a leaf slides down the line, it'll hit this, and a lot of times it'll flip right off the line, or it'll hold up there. If it's not there, the leaf will slide down, wrap around your lure, and you'll never catch a fish. That's one reason. But the most important reason is salmon and trout roll in the line, and they have the lure in their mouth, and the line gets around their body, and then it'll get wedged in the bend of a treble hook. And when the line gets wedged down in that hard metal, it will cut it. And then the fish will swim away with your lure. That's the way the treble hook's made. It's the only way they make them. It's going to happen. So by putting this 30-pound piece on, it'll cut down the 10 and we'll still land the fish. Or if I got 20, he's gone. So I'm going to lose, I used to lose 25 fish a year. Now I lose about 5 by using a heavier piece. And last, the third thing is that when the customer has the salmon on and I get ready to net it, I see this knot out of the water. Now I know the fish is right there, so I'm ready to net him. I'm ready for him. If he jumps or whatever he goes to go under the boat, I can net him real quick because I know he's right there. Keeps him from getting in the motor. I'm going to put this lure in the water and I'm going to let out approximately 40 to 50 feet of line. This lure with that much line out will run probably 12 to 14 feet down. The water where we're at right now is 12, 14 feet deep. You catch these fish near the bottom. That's where they move up and down the stream, and that's their home when they're in here before they get on the beds and spawn. I'll put it in the water. I'll pull out about 50 feet of line and set it in the holder. The current will drive the lure to the bottom. The lure's floating downstream now in the water, and as soon as I stop it, the current will drive it down to the bottom. Always set your furthest lure downstream from the boat. Always set that first. Do not set the short lines. If you set the short lines out first, when you let the long line out, it's liable to run into the other lure and entangle it up. So you eliminate that. The more line I have out, the higher the rod is. The less line I have out, the lower the rod is, because the amount of line in the water will help the bait to get down closer to the bottom. This lure is probably 30, 35 feet back, and it's bouncing in the rocks. It's 4 feet there. This one is probably 20, 25, and it's bouncing in the rocks is probably 3.5 foot there. This one right here is probably 20, 25 feet out. Now, if you'll notice, this is the lowest rod in the holder. As far as, this is the highest rod, it's up in the air, it's further back. This is medium, it's halfway between. And this is low, because it's closer to the boat. If you put them all up the same, there's one. No, he didn't stay. We just had a hit here, and he hit it. That fish rammed that lure, chased it off his nest, and the lure come flying out of the water. So we get it back down there. She didn't get it, she's just pushing it. There's some fish on the beds, so we'll probably have another one here shortly. This is the spawning season, mid-March to mid-April for the steelhead. And the places you have to fish during the spawning time, you're not going to catch them anyplace else. You've got to get right in the bed areas. They will come to you. That's where the fish are. So right below us here, there's a shallow rock area. Above us here, it's 10, 12 feet. Out in the middle, it's 8, 9 feet. But right in here, close to this bank, real tight to the shore, anywhere from 6 feet to the shore, out to maybe 6 feet on the other side of the boat, we've got what? 25 feet of water from the shore on out, where it's very shallow. The river is only 3 to 4 feet, but it's very fast running over those rocks. The rocks are anywhere from the size of marbles to baseballs. So the whole bottom's covered with them. And they steelhead will get right in that shallow water this time of year, and they'll just work those rocks with their tail and make a little indention in the bottom. Just make a little
indention in the bottom of the river. Then the female will deposit the eggs in the rocks. The male will be right behind her. He'll move up. He'll fertilize the eggs. The water will just turn white. And they'll fertilize the eggs, and they'll guard the nest for a while to a certain period of time. And then when they're ready to leave, they'll leave the nest. And eventually these eggs that are fertilized in the rocks, little fish will wiggle out between the crevices of the rocks and swim on downriver. And that's the spawning of the steelhead.
Okay.
To catch them this time of year, we like to use, this is one of my favorite lures, gold flatfish. And we don't put a lot of line out. Throughout the winter, we're fishing deep holes. We have to have a lot of line out to get down near the bottom. Here, since it's so shallow, you need a small amount of line out. Sometimes you're only 15 feet behind the boat to 30 feet behind the boat. Never any more than that. Because if you let out too much line, your lure's not going to work. And we'll put a bunch of lures out here in the bed area. And as these steelhead are moving around in those rocks, they'll attack those lures because they're afraid that these lures are going to eat their eggs. That's basically why they're striking. Not to eat them. Strictly a defensive, protective stage. March is a good month to catch steelhead in the St. Joe River at the mouth of creeks. And it's spawning habitat for the steelhead. Salmon will go up it and spawn in the fall, and then the steelhead will go up that river and spawn in the spring. So when you get into March and April, they spawn probably, most of the spawning is done from mid-March to mid-April. And then late April, they go back into Lake Michigan once they're done spawning. And the reason we fish the creek mouths is because this is where the fish will go. They'll hang at the creek mouth till the water gets the right temperature for spawning, and then they'll just move on up the creeks. So you've always got some fish at the creek mouths. We saw a huge steelhead come to the surface and riffle the water, and it was really neat. So we thought we'd slide down through here. We've got it's just two of us. You like 2 lines per person, so we've got 4 flatfish out. T4 flatfish that'll get down to the bottom. We're in boat's in about 7 feet of water. The back where our lines and our lures are, it's probably about 9 feet of water. Now we know there's some fish here, so now we got these 4 flatfish out with enough line. They're working near the bottom. We put a trolling plate down on the back of this Mercury motor, which keeps us from going fast upstream. We want to slowly slide downstream. So we're going to start the motor, raise the anchor off the bottom, and we're slowly going to go downstream. The fish are always near the bottom with their head facing upstream. Well, we're not going to troll forward upstream. We're not going to run the bait by the fish forward. What we're going to do is we're going to back it down into his face. As the lure's wiggling down and the steelhead's here, it'll come right at him. And they never hit a lure in the river for food. They only hit it because it invades their territory. So what we're going to do is we're going to invade their territory and catch some fish. I'm going to put a flatfish out here. Right here, it's about 6 feet of water, so I'm only going to go about 25 feet on the low corner ones, because it will get down to the bottom. Then when I put the medium and the high ones out, of course we'll put more line out. We'll go 50, probably 60 and 70, and that'll cover the water. Make sure the drag's right. A lot of salmon in the river right now. They don't always hit.
but we get our fair share. They will sometimes headbutt it, and if it doesn't leave, then they'll bite it. And that's when we catch them, when they bite it. I know there's fish along these rocks. There's a lot of water right here, a deep hole on the bend. The river makes a sharp bend here, 25 feet of water. And that deep hole on the bend. And the river narrows with rocks on each side that tapers to a 6-foot hole. It comes out of this 25-foot pool. And the water just rushes through the narrow rocks. And salmon, trout, salmon love current. They are in the fastest water in the river, near rocks along the shore. That's what they'll spawn in, so they'll stay in this area now after coming in the river. A certain number of them will. Some will go on upstream, some will drop back. There's a certain number of them will stay here, and every year we catch fish here because they want to get into those rocks and spawn as soon as their eggs are ready, and they're close to it now. By mid-October, they'll spawn and then die. This is their 4th and final year. So what we're going to do here, you can set and wait for them, or you can slide downstream. And I like the sliding motion because you can't see where they're at. We know they're scattered down through here. So if we just zigzag in and out and slide downstream, we're going to get it in front of one, and they're going to hit it. So we'll get started here now. Make sure they're all working. This has got to be done real slow. We have to stream slow. If we go downstream too fast, the lure will zip right by them, and they're not too concerned with it. But when it comes slow at them, with the current's giving all the action to the bait that's near the bottom, the fish. A lot of action in this flatfish with 4 hooks, and they're always facing upstream. They're downstream of us, so if we go backward, we have a better chance of catching them than going forward, because they're not going to chase it to eat it, but they will hit it when it comes right down into their territory. They'll hit it coming at them. It's not that they won't hit it going forward, but they'll hit it better coming back at them than going forward. The whole key is slow. Cover the water slow. That noise is the power winch that lifts the 80 pounds of log chain anchor, and I keep it a couple feet off the bottom, and that way I can drop it when we get a fish on. The reason we use log chain is it never gets hung up, and if we want to drag the anchor somewhere, we can just pull it, just turn the boat right or left and drag it across the bottom. It doesn't get hung up, yet it's enough weight to hold us, and it works extremely well. And most of the guides and most of the fishermen that fish a lot on the river use a log chain anchor. If you have a claw anchor, you'd get it hung up, you'd never get it back. So we use a great big heavy cable and a power winch that'll lift 1,500 pounds, and that way we can lift the anchor up and drop it down where we need to be. Works extremely well. We got 4 in the cooler. We've been out less than an hour here on the river, and there's one. Okay. This is what it's all about. Now I've got the anchor down. The boat stops. I'll go in the back, and Jody's fighting the salmon. And we'll see where it goes. If it gets near the other lines, I move them out of the way. I'm going to raise the motor up out of the way so her fish doesn't get into the prop. Because in the river, these big salmon
In the river, these big salmon go where they want to. Boy, oh boy. I always thought I was better at netting fish than that. This one gave me a hard time. Okay.
Anytime you're fishing in the river and you have high water, you must go slow. Here's why. If you race downriver 3 or 4 miles to fish a spot and you pull in and put your lines out, your wake in that high water has washed leaves, sticks, and silt off the bottom, which will in turn drift down the river, clog your baits, and with a little black leaf or a little stick or any little debris on your lure, the fish is not going to hit it. It's not going to work right, and he's not going to strike it. So you really hurt yourself. If the water's high, go slow to where you want to fish. If you're going upstream, you can go fast. If you're going to go upstream in fish holes, because everything's going to be washed down behind you. But if you go downstream, you've got to go slow. And the same thing if you have cold weather in the wintertime, which we do, and you have scum ice along the shore, or even ice that's thicker, and you break it loose, and you go downstream 3 miles and you break all that ice loose and you pull into a hole and you set your lines out, ice will float down the river and just continuously tangle and clog your lines. You're defeating your fishing technique to catch fish. You're just hurting yourself. So if a fisherman uses common sense that way, he'll have a much better chance. If there's other fishermen out fishing and he's racing up and down the river wide open, he breaks all the ice loose, nobody catches anything. So it's common courtesy to do that. In the fall, one of the techniques of fishing that works very good on the steelhead in the St. Joe River, which are large rainbow trout, they come in the fall and they spend the winter. They spawn in the spring. They go back in Lake Michigan. And one of the ways to catch them, when we catch the steelhead, we take the eggs out of their stomach, and this is called a skein of steelhead eggs, and they're held together with membrane. And we just take a pair of scissors, works best, and we cut them in chunks, usually about a little bit bigger than your thumb. And we take a 9-foot, this is a 9-foot Browning noodle rod. It's got a very light tip. They call it a noodle rod because it bends very easy. It's just like a fly rod. If you're Italian, it's a linguine rod. And we put a small spinning reel on, 12-pound test line, a couple two-way swivels so that the sinker slides up and down. That way when the fish picks the spawn up, he'll pull to the rod tip and he won't be pulling the weight. You want just enough weight. I like to put a snap swivel on the bottom so that the weight that we use is just enough to hold the bottom. It's very important that this spawn is worked on the bottom in a hopping motion, and I'll explain that to you in a minute. We like to use about a size 6 Eagle Claw laser treble hook, so that if that steelhead just mouths the spawn, you have him hooked. He doesn't have to swallow it, and that'll hold him extremely well. We'll take the treble hook and we'll put the spawn, we'll just wad it around the hook and make sure it's on good. This is a porterhouse steak to a steelhead. This is what they eat in the wintertime. You drop the sinker in, just open the bail and let it fall to the bottom, and close the bail. Now I like to hold the line on my finger, and it's just a rocking motion as you walk it downstream. And as that spawn is hopping along the bottom, it goes straight towards the fish because they're always near the bottom. And it's like a similar way of drifting spawn through a hole. But instead of drifting it, when you drift it, a lot of times it'll get hooked on sticks on the bottom and rocks, and you'll lose your rig if you're throwing out and drifting it in the current. This technique is the sinker hops over the rocks and over the logs, and you can walk it a long way downstream. And when Al's walking this down, he'll go to pick it up and make it hop, and he'll feel either a little jerk or resistance. And when he does that, he holds the rod perfectly still, and he can really feel that fish just moving ever so slow with that spawn. He'll wait a little bit, lower the rod tip, and then he'll cross his eyes. Well, you notice he's keeping the rod tip up high, which is what you want to do. And the reason for that is he can really feel the bottom. The most important thing, now see when he drops it, you'll see the rod come down, and he can feel the sinker hit every time. If he's not feeling the sinker or any resistance, then he has taken line beyond the sinker, which is bowled way downstream, and therefore he'll never know when one takes it. So it's very important to have enough weight. Now, if he can't move that sinker downstream in a hopping motion, he'll bring it in, we'll put a lighter sinker on. If it's moving too fast and he doesn't feel bottom, then he has to put a heavier sinker on. How does that sinker feel to you? Okay, good. Now, I have found in walking spawn, in the midwinter when the water's very, very cold, the metabolism slows down. They don't need a lot of food. And so we use a smaller piece of spawn and we walk it slower because they don't move as fast. But in the spring and the fall when the water warms up, then we'll use a bigger piece of spawn and we can move it right along faster. They like it more on the move, more of a drifting motion rather than a hopping motion. So we'll just skip it right on down. And so in the spring and the fall with warmer water, 40 to 45 degrees, you want to move it a little faster. In midwinter, 32 to 34 degrees, just move it real slow, real slow. Well, he'll go to pick the sinker up, and sometimes it's a stick or a rock. He'll feel resistance and he'll stop because it's either a fish, a rock, or a stick. And if he doesn't feel it moving or doesn't feel a couple little taps on it, then he knows he's got the bottom, so he'll reel it back in or try to go beyond that. But if he's sure it's a fish, he'll hold his rod real still, looking at the rod tip and feeling the fish, and then he'll just kind of lower the rod a little as the fish starts moving off with the spawn. And he'll lower it, and he really feels the fish has it. Boom! He's got to set the hook. And then immediately when he sets the hook, he's got to make sure he gets the bail closed, because sometimes the line gets caught on your finger and that fish will, it's like a paper cut. The line will cut your finger. And I've never caught a fish yet that was wearing a raincoat. And people always ask me, they say, do the fish bite better when it's raining or when it's not raining? And I always answer that question. But I had to change the way I answered it, because one time I said, I never caught a fish wearing a raincoat. And the guy says, you mean you never caught a fish while you were wearing a raincoat? So I had to rephrase it. But what it does is it will wash things into the water, heavy rain, and clog your lines. It'll make the river go up considerably. And when it goes up, of course, it washes sticks and leaves down, clogs your lines, makes the water dirty and not clear. Clear water is better fishing, so rain does have an effect. Winter's great also. We have, you get up in the morning, you got fresh fallen snow on the trees and on the riverbank and little ice floating by, and it just, it's like a winter wonderland. It's just really pretty on the river with the snow. I really enjoy that too. Some days when we're out here, the temperature can drop into the 20s, and we have no problem fishing because we have a kerosene heater inside. And We have enough room out here to work the fish. It's very important that we have the top in the heater because the wind can blow. It can be very cold and rainy. And yet we're dry and warm inside, and it allows us to fish all winter long in all conditions. Got the back of the net, John, so that the net doesn't get caught in a rod holder or anything. I'm keeping the mesh in because if it's out there like that, it can get caught on something. So hang on to it. Never keep your rod upstream down near the water. Never put the net in the water till you're ready to net the fish. Keep the net away. Wait till the fish is right in here. Should make one quick scoop. Okay. Nice job. Yeah, probably about 18, 20 pounds.
Variety of fish. Catch the king, cohos, lake trout, brown, and steelhead, which is pretty amazing. There's no other piece of water that I know of that I've ever fished that offers that much fish. And the St. Joe area has the lake and the river fishing, which is another unique aspect of fishing, though. So fishing in the Midwest has been as good as fishing in the Northwest, believe me. I'm from Portland, Oregon, and I do a lot of steelhead fishing and salmon fishing, and the limit is 2 fish, and on a good day, 2 or 3 fish in a boat is an excellent day. The St. Joe River, I've seen days when there's been 10 to 12 to 15 steelhead, and so when you want to rate it, the Midwest, the Great Lakes area is right now, today, better than the Northwest. Not as good as Alaska, but better than the Northwest.
Look at that, I got 2 of them on. One here and one here. There's one downriver and one over here. Coach is sat down in the water. Okay, now you're gonna have to come over this right. You're gonna have to let go of the handle. Tired now. He's had 3 big jumps. You gotta be an idiot somewhere. Take it down near the water. That's it. I tell you, he's fought good for being small. New leader in the clubhouse.
Yeah. Nice one.
Goodbye.
Oh, see him come out.
Hey, he wants to jump in the boat.
Yeah. Okay, now he's going back. Go ahead and take him out.
Woohoo! I can't believe it! High five!
Let him go.
He's doing fine. Oh, yes! Nice job, Bob.
Nice job.
Nice one, too.
Bigger than yesterday. Look at that.
There's the red. Nice net there.
Oh yeah, nice color in that baby. Look at that.
Oh my God! Look at the color on it. God! I know. That's your best picture. Not for you.
Okay. How's it feel, honey?
Can I kiss him?
Yeah.
We catch them from mid-March to mid-April.
Only what he is.
This is a Chinook.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna have to just do one of the cat.
Okay.
I want to give a special thanks to the Department of Natural Resources for the outstanding job of the stocking program. And without their stocking program, we wouldn't have a fishery. Again, they've done an outstanding job.
When you cut right here by the gill, then grab the head, something to hang on to, and run right along the belly, right down past the back fin. Now you turn the fish around, and what you have, here's the fillet. By grabbing it by the tail and going right down close to the backbone and just stay, apply pressure, go all the way down. And those bones are big and hard, but we got right through them. There. Now when you pull it off the fish, look at that fillet. It's uniform, it's not ragged, it's not thin, it's not thick. It's a beautiful fillet, and you get 2 off each fish doing it this way. And it's fast. When you're filleting these fish and you got 20 fish here and you want to get them cleaned in a hurry, this is a quick way to do it. Now, the skin on one side, some people leave it on the smoke or grill, but we usually take the skin off because it's going to be, you just grasp the skin, leave a little piece on there, and just put the knife down underneath and pull her right through. And what do you have? You have a beautiful fillet. That is a huge fillet off from a really nice steelhead, and it's perfect. There's one.
Wow.
There you go, Barney. Now let go. Yeah, I think so. We don't. You're all right.
Oh my God.
About an hour later, he woke up and he looked down there and he says, "Laddie, I don't know where you've been, but I see you won first prize."